Hey YouTubers, Linda here. I want to talk some more today about the water walk experience. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is part of the water walk experience, and a major part of what makes a water walk such a challenge is you can't see how God is going to take you from where you are and where you probably have provision to where He's telling you you're going to go, and He's telling you He's going to provide for you. And you cannot see where your provision could possibly come from in some of the situations that you can be put in a water walk. And it's prime time for fear to move in. I mean, it's just what would normally terrify most people. But anytime God leads you to go somewhere or speaks to you directly and says, okay, I want you to move from Michigan to Houston, go down there and have work for you to do. You're going to do work for my kingdom. That may be all you're told. And when you're told that, you continue to pray for more detail, but in the meantime, you begin to look at, okay, where can I move to in Houston and how can I get there? You begin to move in the direction that God has spoken to you to go in while you wait on Him to give you more detail. You do everything that you know to do. You take the one step towards God, and then as you take that step towards Him, He will begin showing you the other steps that you need to know. God always works on a need-to-know basis. If you don't need to know yet, He is not going to tell you yet. And that can drive you crazy if you think you have to have all the answers. Or I was always a planner. I always wanted to have, my whole plan. And I had not only a plan A, I had a plan B, and sometimes I had a plan C. And what I've discovered with God is there's plan A. That's God's plan. And there is no plan B. You have to be completely sold out. You have to be completely committed to do whatever He is leading you to do or whatever He speaks to you to do. You cannot have your own plan to fall back on. I know that's a nice feeling to have it, but if you have that, you will never make it in a water walk, because your mind, when you get afraid, your mind is going to say, okay, let's go to plan B. This is not working. Let's go to plan B. And you will not stand in faith for God's best, which is plan A. So just a little nugget from the Voice of Experience speaking there, because I was very definitely a planner before I got into a major faith walk with God. Part of establishing you and your testimony during water walking times is there will be many times when you cannot hear God speak. There will be many times it's almost as if He's withholding His voice from you. As I've shared earlier, when the Lord brought me to this state and to this town, it was 10 days before I even knew what town I was going to. In that 10 days, I was staying in a motel, and I would leave the motel each day, and I would go and I would drive in the area that I knew God had showed me in my spirit, and I would just pray in the spirit and say, is this the town, Lord? Is this the town? Because I know if I find the town, You said the provision would be there, so I have to find the town. And please help me find the town. And I would just drive and pray in the spirit. And if I felt myself getting weak, if I felt myself, maybe starting to get fearful, I had some prayer lines programmed into my cell phone on speed dial, and I would call one of them and ask them to pray for me, and or I would call, some of my friends or my mentor. One very good thing to do when you're on a water walk is surround yourself with other water walkers, because the enemy's going to send as many people as he can to scream fear, doubt, and unbelief into your ears. And I was very fortunate to have several friends who supported me during my water walk emotionally. And if I felt like I was going into a meltdown, which I did a couple of times, I would call them and they would pray for me over the phone, and they would lift me back up. In the meantime, the enemy, was sending other people to say, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? That is not a smart thing to do. But when you know you've heard from God, you know you've heard. And if you're being convicted in your spirit and you're being led in your spirit to go somewhere, you just need to obey. It's not going to go away. And if God is leading you to go someplace else and you stay where you are, your provision will dry up. And the anointing will go away on the place that you are, and you will hate it. Instead of liking it or being comfortable in it, you will hate it. So that's one of the ways that He shows us that He wants us to move someplace else, is when it's time to move, that anointing will lift off of where we are in a place that maybe we've been happy there for years. Suddenly we just see it through completely different eyes. We don't want to be there anymore. We don't enjoy being there anymore. Maybe there's no peace there anymore, and the provision will go away, or bad things will start happening to us in that place. And that's one of the ways that God shows us that, hey, I'm trying to get your attention here. This is not where I want you anymore. When it was time for Elijah to leave the brook Cherith, where God had sent him and had the ravens feeding him twice a day, the brook dried up. And then he spoke to Elijah and he said, okay, go to such and such town, and there's a widow there that I've commanded to feed you. And he got there, and the widow was about to make her last cake. But Elijah's faith was just so strong. He's like, well, make me a cake first, and then make the cake for you and your son. And God came through and fed all three of them for the rest of the famine. So if you follow what God's telling you to do, you'll have provision. You won't do without. If you're in obedience, God's going to make sure that you have everything you need. If you don't obey and go when he's telling you to go, you may encounter a completely different set of circumstances than having everything you need. So one of the things to do, you've got to be fully persuaded that you are in the walk 100%. You're going to do whatever it takes. You've got to be completely committed to do the walk. There's no plan B with God. If you're going to walk with God, walk with him. Don't say, okay, well, Lord, I'll do that, but only if you do this. God doesn't work with your conditions, and your restrictions do not restrict God, they restrict you. And he doesn't say, okay, I'm the Burger King God, you can have it your way. That's not the way that works. He is God. He is God all by himself, and he is God over the entire universe. And you will do it his way, or you'll just stay where you're at. And a lot of people do stay where they're at because they think that they can boss God around. You're not his boss. So, I don't want to sound rude or anything, but we're not his boss. He's God, and we're the servants, and we have to remember that at all times. You cannot put conditions on him, and you cannot have 1 foot in the water walk and 1 foot still out in the world saying, okay, well, God, if you don't come through, then I'm going to do this. It doesn't work that way. Because what will happen is you'll stand there with 1 foot on each side, and you'll keep standing there because nothing will happen. He will not move you forward. And you will not, meanwhile, your provision's going to dry up wherever you were before, or wherever you still are, because you're not willing to step out on faith when he's telling you to step out. And when that happens, when you stay where you're not supposed to be, he's really not obligated to bless you or keep you in that place because you're out of obedience. And when you're disobedient, you're kind of out from under his umbrella there. So that's something to pray about. If you believe that you're being led, you really need to pray about it, get confirmation, and go ahead and move forward. Because it's a lot easier to be water walking and be in his will and not know for sure where your provision's coming from, but know that he's God and he can provide, than to stay where he doesn't want you. Because then, when you stay where he doesn't want you, you are obligated to provide for yourself. You're living an Ishmael life instead of an Isaac life. So that's something to give some thought to. We always want to be in his will and completely in his will if we want to get all the blessings. So I just wanted to share that with you about being totally committed in the walk, and understanding that the water walk is never about us. It's not about God meeting our conditions. It's not about us, period. It's always about him, and we have to remember that. Humans tend to be very self-centered creatures. We think life is about us and it revolves around us, and it doesn't. We are here to serve him. So the sooner that you get those things in your heart, it becomes much easier for you. So I wish you great luck if you're in a water walk experience. And I hope this has helped you. And we'll go into the next video now.